Welcome back to the Belfry Hockey Podcast. This is episode 4 of Belfry Offense, and I'm going to focus on timing the offensive blue line off the rush. So I just did a tweet on Jesper Bratt to highlight this, and I think that in watching New Jersey, I watched them a lot this year, and they're one of the best teams, if not the best team off the rush as a team. Their entry plays and a number of chances that they generate off the rush are outstanding. And how they do it, I think, is also interesting in the way that they leverage the assets of their athletes. So, in particular, like Bratt and Hughes are extremely good at timing the offensive blue line. Hughes, for his time in the NHL, has been an entry machine. He's phenomenal on entries. And I think that Bratt is one of those guys that really does a great job of contributing to his success. He's a guy that he's an accelerator to Hughes, and he makes Hughes better. And I think one of the things that he does really well, both of them do really well, is one, they skate off the puck really well. They have great anticipation when the puck is going to turn in the defensive zone or in transition. They get themselves into good spots where they have a little bit of runway of space, and then they accelerate in that space to put pressure on the D. More important than that, it's more important than getting speed through the neutral zone, although speed through the neutral zone is obviously really important in creating a differential and then creating little 2-on-1s on the entry. All of that's really important. The routes that you take, making sure you have good spacing, all that's really important. One area that we haven't really talked about in terms of detail that I just don't hear enough of, and that is this timing of the offensive blue line, how important it is. And once I started to notice it, and then once I started to really watch it, it was one of those things that you just couldn't unsee. So someone who's not very good at timing the offensive blue line, the negative impact that they have on rushes thereafter is significant. Those who have an ability to time the offensive blue line really well, their positive impact towards rush offense chance generation is massive. It's such a big swing that it just shows how important that it really is. So what I mean by timing the offensive blue line is the moment in which the puck enters the line. So as soon as it crosses and puts everyone on side, how proximal is your F2 to that position? So F1 is the puck carrier. We can't do anything without him. So he has to take the puck across the line. So he has a responsibility in how he puts the play on time. So can he reach the puck across the line before he's actually ready? Like, you'll see that every so often. You'll see a puck carrier have the puck. He's not quite ready to enter. He's not really in a great space, but what he does is he reaches the puck across the line to put it on side so that the F2 then can get depth and can create some problems with their speed, and because they're on time, they can create some opportunity. So that the ability of F1 to recognize where F2 is, a speed F2 has, and then look to try to put them on side. And then you have F2, their ability to get there first, like how quick are you, how much speed do you have coming through the neutral zone? So that's one. Do you use any real deception in terms of your skating that doesn't take you off the line? So there's a line that you need to take because you're trying to get through the neutral zone really fast. You can't be moving like a snake through the neutral zone because you're not going to get there on time and it's going to take a lot longer. So you need to use linear crossovers to do it, which is another skill that's really important. You have to be able to change speed. You got to get comfortable in closing space. Because a lot of on entries, you're trying to create space, right? You don't want to turn pucks over at the blue line, so you're trying to create space. But if you do it well, that means you probably start off with some type of a space advantage in terms of a runway of space, and then you're accelerating through that runway of space. You're actually closing your own space off. And then on the moment of truth, the defenseman is trying to time it so that he can challenge at the line. And now you're arriving, and hopefully you'll have a speed differential that you can leverage, but the space has been significantly reduced. So now on the entry, you have a defenseman who is not really matched speed because you have a speed differential advantage, but you've closed off your space. So while a defenseman doesn't have a speed advantage where he's matched the speed, he does have a space advantage because you've closed your own space by collapsing on top of him. So now it challenges you how many plays can you make in a higher traffic situation. You have to get inside the player's stick, and now the defender has more opportunity to try to control the play. So in a perfect world, the defenseman would see you coming a mile away, would have already established a gap. There would be nobody pushing you back. The defenseman would then be able to set the space, set the gap, and set their speed so that they could match speed, and it would be a non-issue. If they're really good, they'd come at you forwards, they would match speeds with you forwards and really take the whole thing away. But regardless, it's a whole thing of being able to match speed. In the NHL, it's incredibly difficult to do that because there's such an emphasis of getting north all the time. Somebody is coming with a lot of speed, and they're getting out first, whether they're slashing, whether they're driving the outside. Somebody is trying to get out, and they're trying to expand the space and get out there. So once they get out, they're stretching the space. They're going to pull you back. That creates the runway for speed underneath. Now we get the speed underneath. Now we're in business. Now that's where your F2 and your F1 are really going to go to work, because really you don't want to pass the stretch guy all that often. Unless you can find a stretch guy where you can give him a direct pass and then now he's a threat, where that he can kind of either get a little bit of a breakaway, a half breakaway, like that kind of thing. Fair enough. That's excellent. But the odds of that happening are not as high. Like, you can get that 2 out of 10, that's great. The other 8 times, your job is to just push back so that we can create a speed differential. That's where you create the runway of space so that the forward is attacking with a higher speed than the defenseman. The defenseman got pushed back by the guy who's not really the threat. He pushed you back. Now you got to accept the next layer of speed, but that layer of speed is coming with significantly more speed than you, because you have to slow down to accept the next layer of speed. So that's the situation that we're talking about. Now, in timing the line, F1 and F2 need to work together. First, you need to focus on angle entries. You don't want to enter a perpendicular across the line. You want to enter on angles, and both players need to work off of angles. The goal on an angle, and the reason why you do angle entries, is you're trying to invite the defender to move also on angles. Defensemen are uncomfortable, particularly when they have to skate backwards, moving like on angles. So you want to move on angles to invite them to also move on angles. If you go straight and the defenseman can accept you going backwards, going straight, or forwards, they've attached to you and you continue to go straight, it's a much easier and more comfortable way for them to defend. So you want to prioritize angle entries, because angle entries have a way of inviting defensemen to also move on angles, which also creates opportunity on the opposite direction. So let's say you have a defenseman in the middle of the ice, and you attack in the middle of the ice, and then you move towards the left. As you're moving towards the left, you pull the defenseman also to his left. As a defenseman is moving to the left, as you pull him in that direction, you have a lot more opportunity to the defenseman's right, because he's moving the wrong direction. So now you have these counter plays back to the inside against the angle of that defender. That's angle entries. Want to make sure that we're trying to invite these defensemen on these awkward lines, because that will mitigate some of the problems that you have as you close off your own space. So you have speed differential, you have a space problem that's going to arise if the defending team is any good at the offensive blue line, where they're going to try to create a moment of truth. You have the puck carrier has to be conscious of the speed of the F2 because you don't want to have him have to slow down at the offensive blue line or change his route in any way. He needs to time that line. So he's trying to time the line, working with the F1. F1 is also going to try to get the puck above the line and put you on side so that you can continue to accelerate through. So the whole relationship between F1 and F2 is critical. I think F2 is as important to the rush as anything else. The play of F2 to me is absolutely critical. And we talk about F2 having to hustle and skate hard, but I don't know how much detail we give. Sometimes, like recently, we've talked about him attacking off the heels of the defenseman, and there's been a whole thing with that, which has been great, which has really helped F2 become much more meaningful. A lot of times, we were telling F2 to go. He'd skate straight to the net. The odds of this guy ever touching the puck was so low that the F2 was like the worst place to be. You had to work the hardest with zero payoff. Now we start giving F2 some pucks as he comes off the heels, and we're giving him slip passes through the D, and now he's getting pucks at the net. Well, now, he's more willing to skate with the energy and enthusiasm and effort that's needed for F2. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it, as it relates to F2, is the details that are necessary of timing this line and the impact of pushing the play deep. One of the biggest things with entries is you're trying to establish depth as quickly as possible. How fast can we get to the top of the circle? So we talk about, whenever I hear people talk about the rush, they talk about the neutral zone speed. Fair enough. We need speed through the neutral zone. I'm not going to deny that or dispute that. I think it's a good point. What we also need, though, what we don't always talk about, is the space, the 10 feet before the offensive blue line to the top of the circle. That area is absolutely critical for speed. We need to, the quicker we can get to the top of the circle after entry, the more depth we can create in the play that's going to open up like a dot-to-dot play, your any of your type of cross ice passes. It'll also open up opportunities for your puck carrier to maybe have a little inside cut delay or a little slide delay. The old delay of him turning to the wall, like that's pretty hard to do these days. The whole thing happens a lot faster now. Like a delay before was a longer situation. It took a while to execute. The guy would come in, take the line, he would button hook. It would take quite a while for him to come around, and then he would make plays. We don't have time for all that. The back pressure is so intense. It's usually right on top of the guy. There's just not a lot of opportunity for those types of plays. They happen. It's not to say they don't happen. It's just you can't build a rush delay game based on. You can't build your rush game based on rush delay like that. It's just not projectable. So what you want to be able to do, though, is you do want to have little slowdowns, little inside cuts, little plays in which you utilize that space that's created from the depth that you built from the entry. And that's why timing the offensive blue line is so important, because it allows you to maximize the amount of time, maximize meaning reduce the amount of time it takes you to go from that 10-foot prior to the offensive blue line to the top of the circle, which is the key to building that depth. So you want to build that depth. It comes from timing the line. So when you're doing rush plays with your team and you're building out the rush game and you're talking about details, I think that this is an important detail, and I would build some development around it. I would ask players to arrive on time more frequently inside of the drill progressions and inside of how we're trying to push this along. So when you're entering and the F2 and the F1 need to be really dialed in as to route, angle, and on time. Those things are absolutely critical. And then the puck carrier has to be able to utilize the space that they were able to create to be able to make plays that lead to the offense. Now, I think that if you really watch, really watch great rush teams. They have excellent ability to be able to change sides early in the rush. So in the neutral zone, oftentimes they'll change sides. They're just not going to allow you to just slide over with both of your D, one D on the puck side and the other D in the middle of the ice. They're just not going to let you close that off so easily. They're going to get out of their own zone, and in the neutral zone they're going to change sides and force a shift. Once they forced a shift, now once the puck has changed sides, that'll also allows them to work off the dot line a lot easier than stay on the board. So if you come out of the D zone on the right side and you stay on the right side, the odds of you being able to stay on the dot line on the strong side is very, very slim. You're probably going to be on the wall. You're immediately going to get pushed over by the tracker, by the interaction between the tracker and the strong side D. They're probably pushing you already. You're already going to be over there. So by the time you hit the red line, you're pretty much going to be on the on the boards. So now you're looking at the boards to the dot line is probably the play that you're most looking for. That's really the new middle of the ice for you when you're on the strong side. However, when you can change sides, well, that changes everything, because now when you change sides, the odds of you now being able to work the dot line is very different. So it's a very different rush. And now the guy in the middle, your middle support is truly now in the middle of the ice on an angle, as opposed to boards dot line, you're now dot line middle. It changes the whole rush. So that's why successful rush teams tend to change sides in the neutral zone a lot more than unsuccessful rush teams. Successful rush teams don't use the stretch unless he's going to go on a breakaway or has a chance to catch the pass and get depth on an entry. They don't use him. He's a decoy for speed that comes underneath. Unsuccessful teams use that guy. They knife it in, and they're not really a rush team. They're a forecheck team, where they're asking people to skate 100, catch up 100 feet to try to catch up to get in on a forecheck, right? And fair enough. But that's not really that's part of the rush, but it's not really like consistent rush offense. Consistent rush offense tends to have a dangerous rush game that is coupled with a forecheck game that comes off the threat of the rush, as opposed to the opposite, where you're a forecheck team and the threat of the forecheck is what opens up the rush. I think it's the opposite. I think the better teams have a great rush game. And that's why, like New Jersey, I'm high on New Jersey right now. New Jersey found out last year that they're a great rush team. What they also found out was in the offensive zone, they have a lot of opportunity to grow. I think when they marry the rush game with the forecheck, and the rush game sets up the forecheck, and then they have much more impact on the forecheck because they're utilizing the speed of the entry and the way in which they come through the neutral zone to be able to set up the forecheck, they'll be better positioned to be better earlier in the forecheck. But right now, they're not as good early enough in the forecheck. Then they get stuck in the offensive zone. Hasn't been a real strength in their offense. And then when the playoffs hit, once the rush kind of dried up a little bit, they were left with trying to find a way to get something going off the forecheck. And in the offensive zone, it really highlighted a real growth area of opportunity. I have every confidence that they're going to figure it out, and it'll be because the rush is feeding into that, and then they'll just be quicker in the plays in which they make after the entry. But that comes from utilization of the timing of the entry. And that's why I love Jesper Bratt. I love Jesper Bratt, and I love Hughes, Jack Hughes, because Bratt and Hughes have that rare combination of both guys have the ability. Jack Hughes, I think he led the league or was very close to the league lead in breakaway goals. So that's your center who's getting breakaway goals. So he's timing the line, and they're finding him on entry situations. And then you have Bratt, who I think is one of the best in the league at timing the line and utilizing his speed. So you have both guys who are really good in this area. It's not surprised why, to me, that New Jersey on the backs of these two type these two players be very good. And that's not even to talk about Hischier, who's also really good player in rush situations, although he does it a little bit differently. This Bratt-Hughes combination, especially when they kept going back to it, when those guys are on, you're not going to find too many duos that are better in rush situation, and a lot of it is because of their ability to time the line. One of the things I also think that's really important in timing the line is the utilization of the skating tactics to be able to do it. So one of the skating tactics to do it is a dip excel. So in the neutral zone, I realize that I'm F2. In the neutral zone, I realize that F1 is not in a position to where they're going to be looking to enter with, like they're not sprinting yet through the neutral zone. I need to adjust my route. So the way I adjust my route is I use a dip excel. So I take back some ice to be able, but without losing speed. That's the key. Rather than decelerating, I'm going to change my route. I just move off the line a little bit to keep my speed, and then I come back to the line with more speed because I maintain my speed. That's a dip excel. Working in the flats. So they'll come out, especially on re-entry situations, they come out, they flip into the flats. So the flat meaning even with the puck, they flip into the flat, they catch flat passes in those seams, and off they go. And that allows them to maintain entry speed. It allows them also to catch the puck prior to the 10-foot before the offensive blue line, which then also changes the context of play. So there's a lot of pieces there that really fit in together, and I think that those are also important. The linear crossover we talked about is a really critical aspect of it. Being able to skate the neutral zone and be able to do it with change of speed and be able to gain speed after top speed is what a linear crossover allows you to do. Linear crossover is the ability to cross over after you've reached your highest speed and use the crossover to be able to gain more speed. It's like riding a bike and you've gained top speed sitting on the bike, and now you want to get more speed, but if you just keep sitting on the bike and pedaling, you've kind of reached that maximum. So what do? You get your butt off the bike, off the seat, and that allows you to apply more downforce to the pedal, and now you can pick up more speed at a point in which you weren't able to do if you were just kept sitting on the bike. That's what a linear crossover should do. If you aren't doing it where you're able to gain speed, get your maximum speed, and then you use a linear crossover to gain the new level of speed, you're not really doing a linear crossover correctly. So that's what that is. But I think that as entry, and I'm talking here for 25 minutes on this entry, and in the book it's a page and a half. That's what I mean. That's why I felt like this podcast was so important, because I feel like this is a really important aspect. And in the book, I'm only able to really dedicate a page and a half to it just to kind of raise the discussion. But now I can talk for 25 minutes on exactly what it is that I'm talking about. One of the things that I think, and this is where, like, being able to become more effective off the rush, utilizing your F2 and how important F2 is, and rewarding F2 with pucks and plays and praise for their efforts. Being able to emphasize the value of being on time, knowing what being on time is, and prioritizing being on time on that entry, and the puck carrier's role inside of that, I think, is a critical aspect. And if you almost look at it in a development session, really anytime you're doing the rush, it would be something that would be on my mind of watching for it. And then, I could think of 4 or 5 entry games I would use that would emphasize this guy being on time. One of the other things I think is really cool to do is to show the value of the the foot drag. So the foot drag, there are some coaches who don't love the foot drag. There are times in which you go off sides because you're trying to time the line. And this foot drag can help the puck carrier and the interaction between the puck carrier and F2 to really get the depth. So the foot drag has, to me, little to do with staying onside and more to do with stretching the space available, the runway of space on the entry to allow you to get depth quicker. So that's what the foot drag does. It allows you to get the depth. And when you do it right, and you see guys that do it right, they're literally at the top of the circle in a blink, especially when they use the foot drag and allow allow the puck carrier, to get the line and put you onside and inside that foot drag. It can be an awesome play. And so that's another area to kind of work on, to allow empower the F2 in different ways to be able to time the line. There's lots of different ways. And then you have to empower F1, the puck carrier, on his ability to pass the puck into space. Because now you have a guy flying through the neutral zone, F2, against a defense group that's kind of slowing down because they're trying to contest the blue line. You got this guy who can get in behind them, maybe just get the line and lay the puck in behind and let him go skate into it. That type of play allows you to maximize the speed of the play that's acquired in the neutral zone. A lot of times a puck carrier slows down F2 because they aren't able to execute the proper play. They're too interested to try to make tape-to-tape passes. And to me, on the rush, on these types of plays with the F2, if you're trying to get the puck into F2, oftentimes it's not really like a direct zip pass right on the money. It's a pass into space that he skates onto. So you're putting it on the heels and you're putting it into the backspace that allows him to skate into it. So learning how to pass it with the right weight of the puck into space, because you can pass it into space, but then the guy gets it and he's on top of the goalie. You want to pick it up where he has the time to be able to make that next play. And the last piece is that you're timing the line, but then also your dot wide guy is now in a great position to be able to utilize the space, because there'd be very few things that would be more frustrating than have a great F1 who does a really nice job putting the play onside and does a really nice job of being able to get a play into F2. F2 times the line brilliantly. They come on angle entries. They have the defender in a compromising position. They get the puck to the inside against a defender who's moving on a diagonal, which they don't love to do, and you've exposed now the middle of the ice. That F2 gets it. Their feet are flying. Their butt's on fire. They got great depth in the zone. And now you got a guy dot wide who's not ready. So now you can't do what I think is the real play that you'd really like to do, is have two on ones. You 2-on-1 the primary entry defender, and then you 2-on-1 the weak side defender. And that's where your dot wide guy comes in. And that dot wide positioning is so important. Sometimes you need to stay back because he's going to go dot wide in the space behind F2, on the heels of F2. But sometimes he's got to get up there because the play goes into F2. Now the play is going to be later below the dots. Having that the driver on the outside really understand how to manage the dot wide position and know when to stay higher and when to go lower and be able to be on time so that they're a threat, because we want to do those two-on-ones and be able to shoot at empty nets. So that timing of the offensive blue line, I'm hoping I've left an impression of at least looking at it and watching it more and see the situations when that F2 is not able to time the line. They have to change their route. They slow down. One of the worst things we do is we have him skate up to the blue line and then kind of alter his route. That's too late. If you're going to alter your route, it's a dip excel and it's done before the red line. Because when we get between the red line and the blue line, you should be in full flight. And it's up to the puck carrier to help put you on side in any which ways, because depth is so much more important. So I think you got a lot to work off of here, and I'm hoping to really see more and more of this discussion, because I think that it's a really important piece, and I'm anxious to see New Jersey this year, as I love to see how they're able to take that rush game that they have and then add it now into quicker plays on the forecheck that lead to chances, and then ultimately feed into a much improved offensive zone game, which would really take that offense and make it very interesting.